project for budgetary reasons. In your assessment, what will the impact be to the technology development and the cost, which results from CSA's decision to pull out of the W-1st?
Yeah, so that decision was factored in to the project's replanning after the independent review of W-1st, and was factored into the plan they brought forward to move from Phase A to Phase B. So they've been able to adjust scope and adjust their cost and schedule estimates to stay within the $3.2 billion and still without the Canadian contribution. So
how does that affect the technology development?
I don't think it significantly affects the technology development. I think that the project has a really good plan to early on develop prototype hardware to reduce the risk of that element as well as other elements of high risk.
How about the mission itself? Does the capability, the mission goals, do they change because
no, the level 1 science goals do not change, and they will meet the requirements of the mission as defined in the NRC decadal survey for astrophysics.
That's great news. So the 18 Omnibus bill required a life cycle cost estimate by May 22nd. That's behind us. When will that be submitted to Congress?
We'll get you that within the next couple of weeks. It's been done, and they're just wrapping up the documentation, and it'll be here hopefully within the next 2 or so weeks. That's our plan.
Great. So many people here on the panel have called the assessment, many assessments that you need stable, predictable funding to plan. So let's close our eyes just for a minute and imagine that Congress might provide multi-year funding authority. It's a pleasant fiction, I know, but let's imagine that. In that scenario, how would this authority change your planning for your programs?
Well, I think it would allow us to only plan once and execute to that plan and deal with the challenges that Mr. Dumbacher had articulated before. The one example that we have of getting multi-year funding was OV-105, which is the replacement orbiter after the Challenger accident, where Congress appropriated multi-year funding for that project, and they were very successful in executing on schedule and on budget with a profile that ramped up, peaked, and ramped down like any rational project plan should, and having the money, the adequate money when they needed it. So that's just an example of what you're talking about.
So that might actually be good for a lot of different agencies in the government, eh?
For any large, complex program that's going to take multiple years to execute, I would think so.
I'm thinking Ms. Chaplain would love that, right? So let me in our limited time. So again, well, actually, Mr. Jurczyk, you may be under constraints, unable to answer this. I think we're all disappointed that the James Webb Telescope cost overruns missed deadlines. What programmatic changes would you make to that program to prevent that in light of that failure? Can you answer that?
I can tell you what we have done.
Okay, good.
To date, and so the first is a series of actions that we worked on with Northrop Grumman. So first of all, we completely restructured the INT organization at Northrop to flatten it and be able to more clearly hold people accountable for getting through the integration and test program. That also has allowed them to identify and resolve issues in a more timely manner to minimize the impact of those issues. We've also added staffing to the INT team out at Northrop, and we've really, I would say, strengthened the mission assurance function and personnel out there to deal with some of the workmanship and quality issues that were mentioned by Ms. Chaplain and others to try to avoid these human errors that have caused schedule delays. Like was mentioned, a small error or problem, it has a very large effect on a program like WWST.
I can well imagine. In 30 seconds remaining, Mr. Martin, do you have anything to add to Mr. Jurczyk's comments on that?
No, we have not done significant oversight of JWST. Congress directed.
How about you, Ms. Chaplain?
Yeah, I believe the actions they've taken have been reasonable. I would note that they were already had some on-site presence over NGAS, but we'll be looking to see how effective those actions are as we do our next review.
Well, here's wishing you multi-year funding authority. And with that, Mr. Chairman, I yield back.